Good evening, everybody. I would like to call to order the May 6th, 2024 Lake Washington School Board meeting. Let the record reflect that all school board members are present and accounted for. Our student representatives this evening are Taran and Shivani. The board values public participation and engagement in the meetings of the board. Board meetings will continue to be live streamed on the LWSD website and are available for viewing following the conclusion of the board meeting as well. The public are always welcome to email board members at boardmembers@lwsd.org. We will begin the evening with a land acknowledgement. The Board of Directors of Lake Washington School District acknowledges that our district is on the indigenous land of the Coast Salish peoples, who have reserved treaty rights on this land, including the Duwamish and the Snoqualmie Indian tribe. We thank these caretakers of this land who have lived here since time immemorial. We commit to continue collaborating with our Native community to teach the indigenous history of this land and these local tribes to all children of the district. We also commit to provide the best possible education for all children of Native descent who attend our schools. I will now entertain a motion to approve the May 6, 2024 agenda.
So moved.
Second.
It has been moved by Director LaLiberty and seconded by Director Yoakum to approve the agenda as presented. All those in favor, please signify by voting aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. Today we have two items for recognition this evening. The board would like to first recognize National School Nurse Day. Director Guthrie, will you please read the proclamation?
Certainly. Whereas children today face more complex and life-threatening health problems requiring care in schools, and whereas all students have the right to have their health needs safely met while in the school setting, and whereas school nurses understand the link between health and learning and are in a position to make a positive difference for children every day, and whereas school nurses have served a critical role in improving public health and in ensuring student academic success for more than 100 years, and whereas school nurses are professional nurses who advance the well-being, academic success, and lifelong achievements of all students by serving on the front lines and providing a critical safety net for our nation's most fragile children. Therefore, we, the members of the Lake Washington School District Board of Directors, do hereby proclaim Wednesday, May 8th, 2024 as School Nurse Day in Lake Washington School District.
Thank you very much, Director Guthrie. The second recognition this evening is for Teacher Appreciation Week, which is May 6th through 10th, and Teacher Appreciation Day, which is May 7th. Director Yoakum, will you please read the proclamation?
Yes, gladly. Whereas teachers mold future citizens through guidance and education and keep American democracy alive by laying the foundation for good citizenship. And whereas teachers encounter students of wildly differing backgrounds, and our country's future depends upon providing quality education to all students. And whereas Lake Washington School District teachers work to create learning environments that support the district's guiding principles of connection, value, and challenge. And whereas the teachers in Lake Washington School District deserve recognition, yes they do, for their hard work to help students achieve the district's vision of every student future ready. Therefore, we, the Lake Washington School District Board of Directors, do hereby proclaim May 6th through 10th and tomorrow, Tuesday, May 7th, 2024, as Teacher Appreciation Week and National Teacher Day in Lake Washington School District.
Thank you. Dr. Holman, would you like to provide any comments about our recognitions
I
this
would,
evening?
starting with our school nurses. You think about a medical professional being embedded within our schools. It's a very unique role that they play, and so often they are interpreting for staff to understand what are the needs that a student has related to their medical needs and doctor's orders and all of these things, and they play a role and they support so many different students. And so I can tell you our nurses provide such a valuable insight into the needs of our kids. I think about when our guidance teams are meeting and trying to unpack what a student needs. That nurse is a critical part of helping that team, that school team, understand what is it that the medical world is telling us that the school world needs to be able to implement? And so just want to thank them for their day-to-day efforts for students and their supportive staff and the system. And then our teachers. We have about 1,800 teachers in Lake Washington School District. And to be a teacher, you go to college, you do an internship, you get hired, you usually get a master's degree. And I don't think there's a teacher that would say that they've ever been 100% prepared for all of the various things they're asked to do. Our teachers provide meaning in academics every day. They address the social emotional well-being of students. They provide snacks. They provide advice. They provide rigor. You think of our two seniors sitting up here tonight. I guarantee you they could tell you some stories about how teachers have helped them along their journey, be it in kindergarten all the way to this year, helping them through their senior year. And so we just appreciate our teachers for everything they do for kids, for our system, and for our community. So thank you to both our nurses and our teachers.
Yes, thank you very much. The next item on our agenda this evening is public comment. The Board of Directors of Lake Washington School District welcomes the public to the business meetings of the board and encourages community engagement. The board dedicates 30 minutes to hear from the public during public comment period of the meeting, with each individual provided up to 2 minutes to speak. This is a change from our former policy of 3 minutes. We've changed the time limit in an effort to give more people an opportunity to speak during the 30 minutes that we have allocated for public comment. Participants should not expect a response from the board at the end of their comments, as we dedicate this time to listening to your voice and would like to get as many members of the public an opportunity to speak as the time allows. Members of the public can sign up to participate on the district website at lwsd.org/board/public comments. Sign up closes at noon on the day of the board meeting, and comments will be offered in the order of sign up. If you've signed up to speak but are not able to attend the meeting, you may designate another person to speak in your place by sending an email to publiccomment@lwsd.org before noon the day of the meeting. If the original speaker is not present at the board meeting and has not notified LWSD of a replacement in writing by the deadline, the board will move to the next speaker. Substitutions at the meeting will not be accommodated. I'd like to also remind everyone here this evening that this opportunity to engage in dialogue is also an opportunity to model respectful discourse to our students and our community. We ask that the audience refrain from commenting and from prolonged applause following each comment, as it takes up time and it prevents us from listening to as many speakers as we can fit into our dedicated 30 minutes. Once the public comment portion of our business meeting concludes, we ask that everyone who is not interested in listening to the rest of the agenda items exit quietly and in an orderly fashion so that we can continue the rest of our meeting. Public comment will now begin at 7:13 p.m. And the first person we have signed up is Zara Eslami.
Dear esteemed member of Lake Washington Board and Superintendent Dr. Holman, I'm Zahra Eslami, a proud parent within LWSD, and I'm here as your constituent and vote within our district. As a mother of 2 young learners with 2 master's degrees in the tech field, education has always been a top priority in my family, instilled in me from an early age. Today, I come before you with a pressing concern regarding the well-being of those students who have faced hurtful treatment or content at their schools in the past 7 months. Education plays a pivotal role in shaping the minds and heart of our youth. It is imperative that we provide an education free from bias, personal inclination, and discrimination. As we reflect on the challenges of the past 7 months and their profound impact on our community, it is incumbent upon us, whether as an educator or parents, to serve as positive role models. We must lead with empathy and foster peace, which requires staying away from inaccurate and influenced opinions. As a proactive parent, our you just also set aside personal biases and prioritize both academic success and personal growth of our students. I propose establishing a department for educational justice, modeled after successful initiative in neighboring districts like North Shore, dedicated to dismantling oppressive system and fostering a culture of justice, intersectionality, and community empowerment within LWSD. I'm fully committed to supporting this vision. It is through the establishment of such a department and by embarrassing the principles mentioned that we can claim LWST's core values of diversity, equity, and inclusion. Let us truly stand by our district standards and ensure that all truly means all. Let's not forget our common bond despite our diverse background. We are all human, we are all parents, we all reside in the USA and seek peace and tranquility within our community. Thank you for your dedication to our students. Together, let us pave the way for a safe and equitable education experience for all. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And the next the public comment we have is Sarah Duke.
Yesterday was Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women's Day of Remembrance. The Federal Bureau of Indian Affairs states for decades, Native American and Alaska Native communities have struggled with high rates of assault, abduction, and murder of tribal members. Community members describe the crisis as a legacy of generations of government policies of forced removal, land seizures, and violence inflicted on Native peoples. But Lake Washington School District was completely silent in memorializing this day. Should we be surprised, though, when the same school district administration recognizes Arab American Heritage Month with a single Facebook post, and none of the resources for the month make any mention of Palestinian books, culture, and history? And should we be surprised when this administration has actively suppressed the voices of students raising awareness, standing in solidarity, and condemning the genocide and the ethnic cleansing of Palestinians, another indigenous group who faced state-sponsored violence in their homeland for 76 years, which includes the kidnappings and detentions of children as young as 4 years old without charges, and where we have watched its population relentlessly bombed, sniped, shelled, tortured, displaced, detonated, and systematically starved, killing over 15,000 children in just 7 months. Yet this administration illegally denied students who requested to hold a walkout at Lake Washington High School in early December. It also further censored those same students in their speech in February by explicitly threatening to confiscate signs at their walkout, which had the words murder, genocide, and river on them, none of which are categorized as hate or discriminatory speech. But most egregious of all is their criminalization of the last walkout by deploying law enforcement into the very same schools who had previously successfully held walkouts with any incident. Criminalizing children for speaking out on the genocide of other children is absolutely despicable. Superintendent Holman, you said the physical and emotional safety of our students is the highest priority. Yet when a white Jewish student at Redmond High School created and widely circulated a video of her dressed in an army uniform with a gun, mocking and pretending to murder Palestinians while her peers lay on the ground with a keffiyeh on them, where was your public condemnation of this? When Eastlake High School had a post on their Facebook page,
if you're not going to wrap up your comments. Ms. Duke, we're going to have to go ahead and recess this meeting if you are not going to conclude your comments at this time. Because the orderly conduct of this meeting is not feasible due to interruption, we will recess this meeting for 10 minutes. Thank you.
Swaggart, we're ready to resume our meeting.
We're going to go ahead and resume our meeting. I would like to just remind everybody one more time that this is an opportunity to engage in dialogue, and we would very much appreciate if you would model the behavior that you want to see within the community and for our students when you are engaging in dialogue. Just leave it at that. The next person that we have speaking this evening is Alex Lee.
Hello, I'm Alex Lee, a trustee with Cascadia College, and just here to give an update on what's going on with Cascadia for the board. The Lake Washington School District of Color Conference is happening on Friday, May 17th, and as of today, additional school districts are asking for the opportunity to attend, and we now have 4 conferences open to 5 school districts. Snoqualmie and Riverview have paired up. We continue to think about our Redmond Center and are working every angle to make sure that those classes are full. We appreciate Superintendent Holman working with President Murray to explore opportunities, so thank you. Also, to help support Cascadia students, our next foundation event is happening at the Woodmark Hotel in Kirkland on May 16th. It's called the Rose Revival, and it's a wine tasting event with bottle sales. You should have gotten an invite from Dr. Murray recently. And like you, the college is finishing up budget planning for the next year and is coming off a great year of enrollment growth. We hope to see that continue. We appreciate your help with making students aware of the possibilities that Cascade offers. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Ishai Schwartz.
Well done. Dear board, I stood before you 5 months ago after my 9-year-old and 12-year-old were targeted by anti-Semitic incidents. Like me, other parents of the community came forward and shared similar stories impacting their kids. The impression I had was that you were not aware of the issue at the time, but now that you are aware, you are going to do something. You will ensure our kids have a safe place to go to school. What have you done? What activities did you pursue? Nothing. What policies or goals did you put in place to protect our kids? None that I can point to. It seems like you just listen to us and hope that doing nothing will make it go away. Well, it isn't going away. It's getting worse. As parents in the Jewish community, we tried working with teachers, principals, superintendent office, and new board members to act and stop the escalation of anti-Semitic incidents. What have we got to show for it? An email from the superintendent 2 weeks ago. That is not enough. Anti-Semitic harassment and bullying at schools is only increasing. These anti-Semitic sentiments and actions are nurtured by external movements, clubs, teachers, students looking to advance their political agenda at the expense of our kids. I can relate to a perverted mind that looks at school kids as responsible for something that happened thousands of miles away, or as tools to drive their political agenda. I can relate to a person who has the power to prevent it, but lets it happen. Today is Holocaust Remembrance Day, Jewish American Heritage Month, and almost exactly 7 months to the October 7th massacre. What better time to act and show you stand against hate?
Thank you. The next person we have signed up is Shaima.
Hello. Since October 7th until March, 31,000 Palestinians are killed, including 13,000 kids. Those are the UN numbers, not mine. This might be just numbers for you, numbers in a place far away from you, but these numbers are families for us, cousins, friends, humans. This is a recorded genocide we're witnessing. Our kids are witnessing. It's in TikTok, Instagram, all social media outlets. They're all witnessing that. They're sad, they're mad about how the government is dealing with it, and they have all rights to do so. Now, here comes an essential right that our founding fathers wanted for us, freedom of speech. If we read American history, many of the rights we are currently enjoying, like ending slavery, women's rights, LGBTQ rights, to name a few, came through people who stood up at their times and said, enough, I need to change this. Kids in middle schools and high schools set up walkouts to show their concerns with the current situations. I mentioned we're losing friends and cousins and families there, and humans. So They shared these concerns through walkouts, which is peaceful protests, just taking 20 minutes of their class time. Those are bright kids who care about their future, by the way. They stood up there to mourn the thousands of people dying every day. What did we do? We kept policing them, telling them, do this, don't do that, say this, don't say that. Superintendent, you sent an email just before the recent walkouts, and I quote, you mentioned these walkouts are being encouraged nationwide by outside groups, end quote. What outside groups? What does this mean? What are you implying those kids are doing? Those kids are just coming from the heart. Just listen to them. Did you ever try meeting them, asking them what they're doing that?
If you could wrap up your comment.
Sure. Just as a parent, all I want from my kid is to come to me and feel heard, valued, and really understood. I have to ask from you. One, please meet the kids. Ask them, do they feel safe coming to you guys, telling you their concerns, that they're feeling sad and how they can be supported? I don't think so. So what you going to do about this? Second thing, 13,000 kids killed. Let this sink in. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Kelly.
Can you ask one of the parents here to be respectful? He keeps calling everybody liars. It's really disrespectful. Yeah.
Is Kelly available for public comment?
She is, though hesitantly so. Here I am. Sorry. I need my glasses. I'm at that age. Okay. Whew. Good evening, board members, parents, and community. In the spirit of SBA and AP testing, I will begin my remarks with a question. What do the following have in common? Martin Luther King Jr., Cesar Chavez, John Lewis, Rosa Parks, Associate History Professor Ben Wright. They were all arrested at least once, if not dozens of times. Dr. King, who we now honor annually with the Day of Service, went to jail 29 times for his acts of civil disobedience and on made-up charges. He was not armed nor vengeful. His greatest crime was imagining a world where all were treated equally with dignity and with respect. The late John Lewis, a former congressman, was arrested at least 40 times and beaten often for his acts of civil disobedience. Later, an advocate for creating good trouble, Lewis was fearless in his fight for everyone's basic rights. In the last month, over 2,200 university students and faculty members have been arrested for voicing their concerns over the occupation and destruction of Gaza. Government and school officials across the country have declared these protests anti-Semitic and have demanded all voices of dissent be silenced. But history shows that just the opposite is needed. The voices of today are the voices of yesterday. The students and faculty being arrested and harassed today will be the leaders and the legends of tomorrow. How does all this relate to LWSD? The district must remain a guardian of the pursuit of unbiased, agenda-free knowledge. It must allow safe, respectful, and civil discourse, and if necessary, disobedience in the form of walkouts. It must ensure that all students learn how to learn, think, decipher truth from lie, and ask critical questions. Our youngest learners need strong foundational reading and comprehension skills, and reading support programs like Safety Net must be bolstered, not reduced in scope nor funding. Instead of shutting down conversations, events, or classes for fear of discomfort, we must embrace these opportunities to learn, each of us. And of course, we must ensure that all students feel safe and respected. Finally, for all those struggling... If you could wrap up
your comments.
What?
If you could wrap up your comments.
Oh, I have 2 sentences more. For all those who are struggling to stay hopeful in these challenging times, I leave you with a quote from Harriet Beecher Stowe. When you get into a tight place and everything goes against you till it seems as if you couldn't hold on a minute longer, never give up then, for that's just the place and time that the tide'll turn. Thank you.
Thank you. The next person we have signed up is Ella.
Can you hear me okay? So thank you again for acknowledging the land and the indigenous people. Our kids are hurting. Our kids are grieving. Our kids are shocked at a world that has been allowing a genocide unfold live on our smartphones. Honestly, too many war crimes to name, but I do appreciate you recognizing the teachers and the medical staff. I encourage you to look up how many medical staff, along with their families, have been assassinated in Gaza the past 7 months. Top professors, teachers, totally annihilated. 6 universities, totally annihilated with TikTok videos mocking the destruction of these universities. Our kids are watching this. They're also shocked at our government sending our tax dollars to fund this genocide and cutting school lunches. You know, there's no hot lunch money. There's no money for libraries. There's no money for books. There's no money for portables. There's no money for schools, but there's money for bombs in this country. Our kids want to practice their First Amendment right to speak of truth, justice, and humanity. They can exercise a walkout in protest peacefully, just like you guys did now. You walked out in protest. Your response should be of empathy, compassion, and understanding, of sending the police to intimidate them. They're very well aware of what's happening on college campuses. The police is intimidating, harassing, and beating, especially minority children. Even a college professor who's Jewish, the head of Jewish studies at Dartmouth College, was beaten and arrested by the police. In 9 days, we will be commemorating the Nakba, or the catastrophe, the event that marks the mass expulsion of the Palestinians from historic Palestine, the destruction of their civil society, dehumanization of their being, appropriation of their culture and foods.
If you could wrap up your comments.
Sure. Here is what I want from the district. Implement a harsh doxing policy against our students. Parents should not feel it's okay to go videotape and take pictures of the students and then just put them online. Add Islamophobia, anti-Arab, and anti-Palestinian hate training in our programs. Teach about the Nakba and its implication and the ongoing milestones, including the existing Gaza genocide.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The next person that we have signed up is Heather. Is Heather here?
Good evening. My name is Heather Colomb, and I'm a parent in the Helen Keller Elementary School community. I serve on our local PTA board as well as the Lake Washington PTSA Council Board. In my 6 years in this district, I've been fortunate to work with many amazing educators, volunteers, and families. My school is currently experiencing a number of challenges, which I've shared with this board and district leaders over the past 10 months. While this process has been frustrating, I would like to thank the board members for their support and guidance as our community continues to seek accountability and support from district leaders. I first spoke about my friend Mia, an autistic 5th grade student facing expulsion. Mia has not been able to attend school since February. I then spoke about specific personal experiences with our principal and the shared concerns about student safety, equity, and discrimination that have been brought to my attention by members of my community. I shared the fear and manipulation our staff experience daily, including facing intimidation and retaliation for attending these meetings. Tonight, I'll share about an incident I witnessed on April 23rd while volunteering at recess. I watched in horror as a 4th grader was restrained by one of his peers while 3 others pushed, kicked, and punched and verbally assaulted him. Dylan, a neurodivergent 10-year-old, and his family have been asking for help from our administrator for months. They have asked for paraeducator support at recess for months. They have asked for a separation plan from at least one of the students involved for months. Each day, Dylan gets up and goes to school knowing he will be threatened, knowing he will experience violence, knowing that the adults in charge will not only fail to protect him from that violence, but blame him for causing it. I am in awe of the courage and bravery Dylan shows each day. I'm grateful for his classroom teacher, his special ed teacher, and our dedicated paraeducator staff who work tirelessly to help Dylan feel safe at school despite roadblocks from our administration. I'm here today to once again ask that this board hold district leaders and our administrator accountable. Keller students deserve it. All Lake Washington students deserve it. Thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight. Advocacy is a privilege.
Thank you. Next, we have Tucker.
Can you guys hear me? Okay. Hello and good evening, school board members. I'm Tucker Andrews. This is Evan Pinnell. We're here on behalf of the Lake Washington High School Green Team. We're sorry that the other members of the team could not be here right now, but the meeting got moved in the middle of AP test week, and we're super busy. Yeah, thank you so much for your support.
I would also like to say thank you all for joining us at lunch. That was a pleasure. I hope it was an informative experience, or at the very least, a little bit entertaining. And we hope you got some meaningful information from that experience, especially regarding our sustainability draft. Thank you for sending that to us. It was disclosed to us at that meeting that it was going to be a bit vague, but I will admit we kind of underestimated that a little bit. We would love to offer some more pointed critique or additions, but we feel we largely agree with the outline that's been made, and that it's in a state in which, again, we can't really offer any specific revisions or additions because it's not really in a state where I could particularly critique like the specific methodology that was going on in that. So yeah.
Yeah, what we instead are asking is simply that when you guys enact this written plan that is spoken about on the draft, that you include the students and parents and teachers of these schools in these discussions and in the way you carry this out. I know more than just the Lake Washington Green Team, but the green teams at the other high schools, the FFAs, parent organizations would all love to be included in this. And yeah, thank you so much for working with us and working for a better future in our schools. Thank you.
Thanks, school board.
Thank you very much. And good luck on your AP tests. Next, we have Michelle Koval.
Good evening. My name is Michelle Koval. I am a parent in the Lake Washington School District with students at Redmond Elementary and Redmond Middle School. I also serve as the PTSA president at Redmond Elementary. I am here again to continue to advocate for the needs of our students and teachers at Redmond Elementary. I'd like to give a shout out to all the teachers and my son's third grade teacher who's here, and all the staff across the district as we start National Teacher Appreciation Week today. We have seen small changes at Redmond Elementary in response to our advocacy. What we have not seen is a commitment to next year. I know there are changes to address class sizes across the district, but those changes will not take effect for the upcoming school year. I've had the opportunity to meet with many district leaders in the past few weeks since I last spoke in front of the board. District leadership shared a sense of surprise in the increase in enrollment in Redmond Elementary. We have increased in enrollment by 44 students this year. Even with the removal of Quest students from our school, our enrollment is larger than it was last year at this time. Enrollment projections sent out by the school district still expect enrollment to increase at Redmond Elementary, unlike most of the district. I know that our school tried to advocate for themselves at the beginning of the school year by asking for a 5th kindergarten class, knowing that their class sizes would be unreasonable by the end of the year. They were denied. If the district had listened to our teachers, our kinder class sizes would be around 20 to 21 students as opposed to the 25 to 26 they currently have. Since the district will not listen to teachers and staff on the ground level and don't seem to be aware of the continued growth of downtown Redmond, I am here to let you know that class sizes at Redmond Elementary need to start low at the beginning of the 24-25 school year. There are currently 5 different apartment buildings set to open within the next year, adding to the enrollment at Redmond Elementary. As a teacher appreciation gift to our teachers, I encourage Lake Washington School District to commit to small class sizes at the start of the 24-25 school year. It should not come as a surprise to district leaders that enrollment will continue to grow over the next year at Redmond Elementary. Please prepare accordingly. Thank you.
Thank you. And the last public comment of the evening is Devin Kellogg.
Good evening, board directors and superintendent. My name is Devin Kellogg. I'm a parent, teacher, preschool teacher, and a stable climate advocate. I wanted to thank you all for your efforts on the sustainability policy and for your recognition of how important this is to ensure a better future for our kids. I'm especially pleased to see the additions of a greenhouse gas reduction plan, which will be the key to our success. Sustainability goals in coordination with greater community, and a dedication to preparing students to help create and participate in the solutions. What's still missing, from what I can see, is language around how solutions improve student health and well-being, clarity on when the various plans are to be completed and how their effectiveness will be ensured, what level of coordination and support there will be across the district, and how students in the community will be able to participate in the process. Lastly, it's not clear who will be keeping track of the unprecedented funding opportunities rolling in to support sustainable improvements for our schools, such as the Inflation Reduction Act Direct Pay Program, offering 30 to 60% of the cost for ground source heat pumps, clean energy generation and storage, clean transportation, and more, to every district. And yes, these are stackable with grants. The 179D tax deductions of up to $5 per square foot for energy efficiency upgrades. This would be great to include during contract negotiations. Additional federal and state grant money for clean buildings and buses, including millions budgeted for schools from our state's Climate Commitment Act, unless it gets repealed on the November ballot, so please vote no. All these solutions offer tremendous operational cost savings for schools, perhaps allowing for more teachers and support staff. They also improve student health and experience and provide excellent learning opportunities. So please consider strengthening, you heard it. I did provide links to all these in my written comments. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That was the last public comment of the evening. If you were not able to finish your public comment, please feel free to email it to the board, and the board will read your public comment. If you are not interested in any of the other agenda items, please feel free to exit. The next item on the agenda this evening is the approval of the May 6th consent agenda. I will now entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Move. Second.
Preemptive second. It has been moved by Director Liberty and seconded by Director Guthrie. Superintendent Holman, will you please poll the board?
Yes. Director Guthrie?
Yes.
Director Yoakum?
Yes.
Director Stewart?
Yes.
Vice President La Liberty?
Yes.
And President Choi?
Yes. Motion carries. Superintendent Holman, will you please summarize the donations this evening?
Yeah. So I want to thank our local PTAs for their donations of upwards of $25,000 on the board's agenda tonight. I guess it's PTAs and PTOs. We have both in our schools. And so thank you for those donations so we can continue programs and services for kids. Appreciate it.
Yes, very much so. The first item on the non-consent agenda this evening is district curriculum selection for K-5 social studies. Dr. Holman?
Yes, and so we have a whole team here tonight to provide the board with a recommendation for an adoption of a K-5 social studies curriculum. And so I believe the team came January, February-ish to the board study session, provided an update as to where we were in the process. Dr. Rose is here tonight to introduce the full presentation team. Jen?
Great. It is a terrific okay, good, we're on. It's a great team, and I just want to, ahead of them presenting their work, talk about how complex the work is and what amount of dedication and hours it's taken. So I will hand it off to the team because it really is their work, and just wanted to celebrate them in advance and introduce Director Kelly Pease to lead the presentation.
Thank you for having us here this evening. I'd like to take a minute and introduce Crystal Stevens, sorry, I have to stand still, this is the hard part. Crystal Stevens, who is our K-12 social studies specialist. Dylan Gordon,
who is a Rose Hill Elementary teacher extraordinaire at 4th grade, and then Christy McLaughlin, who is at Explorida Community School in the 1-2 multi-age. So I want you to pay attention that she's in a multi-age classroom, and she piloted our curriculum in a multi-age classroom. So it's exciting. Tonight, we're going to spend time talking to review the social studies curriculum selection process, an overview of recommended resources, sharing of the teacher and student experience. So you'll get to hear from Christine and Dylan what students experienced throughout the 15 pilot days of the curricular tools. And then we'll talk about next steps in implementation. There we go. So as we were looking at the ensuring that there are elements of equitable instruction within the social studies curriculum that we've adopted, we did several activities and experiences with the adoption committee where they engaged in data analysis of our student outcomes. We really deepened their knowledge and partnered with the equity department to deepen and calibrate our thinking around equitable classrooms and experiences for students. We looked at and are leaning into materials to be dynamic and adaptive over time. I know that we can remember maybe you can remember sitting in a social studies classroom with a social studies book, and you'd go each year we'd follow the chapters in the book. This is a very different experience that you're going to hear about tonight for our children. And we want, really at the center of our work with students is that student discourse and inquiry and preparing them to be contributing members of a democracy. So as we think about how our departments have collaborated together to bring this to fruition and the recommendation we'll make with you tonight. So this is a quick review for you. You saw information around this in our study session. We spent year one really looking at what's the research tell us, getting information from our different departments, special education, intervention services, multilingual, equity, and student services, to really think about as the committee was looking at curricular tools, how do we ensure that it meets all the expectations that we have for our students? I know in the board study session prior to coming in here, you were talking about vision of a graduate. And so we'd like to have you think about, as the teachers talk about the experience our students have, how that aligns with the work that the team has been doing on the strategic work. In year two, we really leaned into calibrating and refining our rubric discussions, and then actually implementing the materials. As we go through, when the teachers share with you about the student experience, it was 15 days. So they spent 15 days with the curricular tool that we're going to recommend to you, and some of the quotes you'll see from students and experiences, that's a remarkable amount of learning and application that happened in 15 days. So, and then moving into the end of this year, we're here today presenting our recommendation, hoping for approval, and then we will then move on to that action planning on how are we preparing the rest of our system around student inquiry, voice, choice, and agency in our classrooms, and to be able to say, hey, here's the scaffolding professional learning that's necessary to have these conversations and experiences for our students. So we know through the whole adoption or through the curriculum selection process, we are really leaning into student feedback, teacher feedback, and community feedback. So part of what you'll see represented in the recommendation are the voices and experiences that each of our stakeholder groups had throughout the process. So we are going to recommend to you Inquiry Journeys, which is a resource published by Inquire Ed. It is an online resource, so that it has that adaptability over time. We really lean into inquiry-based, engaging students in discourse, and really developing the skills to be connoisseurs of information. Because in this day and age, kids, adults spend time learning about things in a variety of ways. We want to foster experiences with our kids to say, is that reasonable or unreasonable? Does that make sense? Does that fit an argument that you're making through your conversations with your peers in your classroom? We also know that this tool aligns closely with national and state level standards. Really, that development of literacy skills that we've talked about, that reading, writing, listening, and speaking, and then the ability to use our adaptive technologies to scaffold for all students. And then also to be able to extend for students who come already equipped with some of the knowledge that we're bringing to them. So it really lends itself to this continuum of learners, from our students who may need, and I'll wait for Dylan has a great story about inclusivity and how his students supported one another in learning social studies. We also know that this particular curriculum really leans into the different cultures that are represented in our district and provides an opportunity, because it is an online resource, to adapt according to what's happening in the world, where something is happening today in the world, which is in 5 years within the adoption history. And so how does the history evolve? And the curriculum resource, because it's not a book that we pick up and read every year, has the ability to be flexible and adaptive. So as we're thinking about moving into next school year, we know that there are requirements, which you learned about in our board study session earlier, around implementation of the since time immemorial curriculum. And then thinking through, we want to be thorough and provide teachers with the skills and strategies and knowledge to implement the curriculum in a way that doesn't contribute to a sense of overwhelm, but really helps us to be, I use the term with the committee, let's go slow to go fast. So as we think about this spring, we'll be working with groups of teachers and specialists to identify a scope and sequence that we'll follow for the next few years. And then, of course, with our cycle of inquiry and the way we evaluate programs, we'll continue to gather feedback and monitor and adjust so that we are responding to the system needs, our teacher needs, and our student needs. So I'm going to hand off to Crystal and let her talk a little bit about our standard alignment and the curriculum choice.
Thank you. So I believe, as you know from the study session with Kelly earlier this year, social studies is not just history. So we expand into these other areas also where we're really empowering students to engage in civic action, and that can look a variety of ways. Similarly, we want them to understand economics and what that looks like, especially when they're K-5 in their day-to-day life, wants and needs, and things that are very approachable to them. Moving into geography, we want them to not only understand what a physical map is or how they could use their smartphone to navigate, but also the importance that has on human beings and the human geography component. And then, of course, we have the disciplinary we're most usually familiar with, which is history. We see that progression through K-5 when we see our kinders come in. They are very well connected to their sense of self. So you'll see those standards for social studies connecting to that and making it directly relevant to them and their individual being. Moving forward, we'll see first grade moving into families and understanding what different families may look like, and that openness and curiosity and critical thinking that comes as we start to move up in elementary. Expanding out again, we go to communities and then progress into culture, people, places, environment, and then thinking about 4th and 5th grade, there's a transition into thinking about a little bit broader. We think Washington State as a whole instead of just our local community, maybe our school district in 3rd. And then thinking about 5th grade, we're thinking about that transition towards middle school and thinking of more of the historical discipline. How do we weave that sense of self that comes from early elementary as we understand history and the context it brings to today? We'll go quickly through the unit overviews because, again, the teachers will have very robust examples of what that looks like. But this, again, shows that progression. We move from kindergarten and very tied to our individual experience into 1st grade, where we begin to think about school-wide community and kind of our broader selves. 2nd grade, again, thinking about our world around us, how we're tying this to those environmental components, thinking about landscape, those needs and wants in the community. 3rd grade, progressing into global citizenship. What does it look like for us to exist together in that broad world community? How are we honoring and respecting cultures? And what are we doing around equality and justice? And you'll notice all of these grades so far have had 3 big inquiry questions that are supported by smaller questions throughout that big inquiry. You'll notice that again in 4th grade, thinking about that Washington State, but in the context of a nation, preparing them to move into 5th grade. And again, really digging into economics more, because it becomes this point where in our elementary experience, we're ready for those deeper, more abstract economic concepts. And then again, ending in 5th grade, thinking about that connection between the past, ourselves, and the current possibilities for our future. Students have an opportunity to engage in not 3, but 4 larger inquiry units. And I'll hand back over to Kelly.
Okay. So as we lean into the teachers telling us some stories about what they experienced and their students experienced in their pilot, their 15-day pilot, it's important to remember that we're looking for a social studies curriculum that's engaging students and encouraging them to connect their learning to prior knowledge and current issues, and that being able to think critically as well as creatively to apply learning to authentic experiences or situations. And so you'll hear about how the content goes from a question to an action, something actionable throughout each of the units that are taught in each of the grade levels. So Inquiry Journeys is inquiry-based learning that develops literacy skills, aligns to national standards, and supports culturally responsive instruction.
So the article about the vision of what makes powerful social studies kind of laid out 5 kind of pillars that social studies instruction should be based off of. One of them is being that social studies instruction should be meaningful, meaning that teachers are planning with intention. The lessons are directed towards the students themselves and what they know and what their community and what they're familiar with. The questions that you see on the screen right here are from the 4th grade curriculum that I piloted, which was the economic choices unit. This is just laying out sort of, we started with this inquiry question of how can we make economic choices that have positive impacts. Very broad question that many 4th graders might have some idea about, but really big concepts that they haven't explored. And then as you dive into each kind of smaller unit within the whole, you start building more information in there for the students themselves. So we went into how do parts of an economy work together, how do producers both shape and reflect their community, how can we make economic choices, and how do people work toward economic goals. All of this information that they were learning is rooted in their experience within their community themselves. Where do they see these different pieces of the economy working in what they are familiar with? And it's not putting something that they don't know as a context for them. It is rooting it in something that they are familiar with and building that learning from, making it more meaningful for them.
A second pillar that the article talked about was that powerful teaching and learning in social studies is integrated, and it's defined as connecting from the past to the present and the future. And this curriculum provides a lot of opportunities for students to learn about the past and history while also making it relevant to their immediate social environment and their own personal experiences, and then giving them a lens into how that can impact their own future and the future of others. There are a couple ways that the curriculum shows us the integration. One is through this concept of mirrors, windows, and doors. And this is talked a lot about in education, especially in relation to literature. So a mirror would be a text that students see themselves reflected back in, that sort of representation. A window would be a text where students see an experience that's different from their own. And then a door is like a call to action, where it's a text that, motivates students to open that door and do something. And so I pulled a few examples from the curriculum. The Who's in a Family is a story that's part of the 1st grade curriculum, as 1st grade focuses a lot on families, as that was previously shared. And this book really provides a mirror for students because it shows a variety of different families and different family structures. There are families made up of 2 dads. There are families where kids are raised by their grandparents. There are blended families with step-siblings and half-siblings and all of that. So it provides a mirror for our students to see themselves reflected back in the curriculum. There are opportunities for windows as well. A Chair for My Mother is a story that was part of the pilot that I did. I piloted the 2nd grade curriculum, and we focused on the economic standards. So we looked a lot at needs and wants and savings goals. So prior to reading this story, my students thought a lot about their own saving goals and the timeline of how long they're going to work towards that saving goal, how they're going to do it, why they want to do it. And then we read this story that really provided a window for them, because it's this lovely book about this family who lost everything in a fire, and then they spent a very long time collecting change in this jar as this visible savings goal to be able to purchase a chair for the child's mother. That way, when she comes home from a long day of work and being on her feet all day, she has a place to relax. And so that provided a different experience for my students to really think about, thinking about our savings goals and how different circumstances could impact the saving goals that we have. And then doors, there are so many doors throughout this curriculum because so much of it is built on an investigation part first, where they're learning and they're connecting to the knowledge, and then there's this action piece with an inquiry product at the end. And so this was just one example from my pilot that I did, which is about looking at needs in our community and helping students open that door and see what are the needs in our community and how can we address those needs and how can we acknowledge things that already exist and people that already exist that can support us in meeting those needs. The other aspect of an integrated curriculum is that content integration piece. And there's tons of literacy components to that. We see reading with the content, with the books. We see writing with lots of opportunities for written responses, listening skills with read alouds. There are videos. And then with speaking, there's a lot of opportunities for discussion with specific discussion protocols. One of my favorite things my kids did, which really surprised me, they just kept talking about, we did concentric circles as a discussion protocol. And they're like, can we do more circles? Sure. And then also opportunities for peer feedback and support to make that constructive peer feedback and learning those skills at a young age with just my first and second graders. Another component to powerful teaching and learning is that emphasis on student voice and democratic values. And the democratic values are defined as a commitment to justice, equality, and freedom of thought. So as part of the committee, I worked really closely with the third grade teachers who piloted the inquiry about the 20th century civil rights movement. And so that whole inquiry had this inquiry question of how can we take steps towards equality and justice? And it led students through understanding the civil rights movement. It went far beyond Martin Luther King and Rosa Parks, looked at a variety of different people who made an impact and all the events and how they were interconnected and led to one another. And then it kind of passes the mic off to them and says, okay, how can you then go out into your community and continue the work that was done before you, and giving them the opportunity to use their own voice. And after each of our pilots, we had all of our students complete surveys to provide their own experiences and perspectives about the curriculum that we piloted. And these were some things that were shared by third grade students after they did this pilot about the civil rights movement that really impacted me when I read them. So one third grader said, I remember learning about segregation, racism, barriers between people, protests, equality, justice, rights, responsibility. All these show that everyone should be treated equally no matter their identity marks. Another student said, I remember learning John Lewis had become an author and signed books in a library he wasn't allowed in when he was little. One student said, I learned about how to use my voice. And a final student said, in these social studies lessons, I like discussing hard topics. So when we think about, we only had a brief period of time to do this pilot, and this is what our students took away. And it just makes me very excited to think about when we are trying to live out that truth of that commitment to justice, equality, and freedom of thought, and how we are hoping that we're not just teaching history as this thing that happened in the past, but helping students see that they can take that torch and carry it to create a more equal and equitable and just society, that they can know that their voice matters in doing those things. Another piece is that the curriculum is challenging and rigorous. And we know that when we have high expectations for students, if we provide the proper supports and resources, that our students will be able to meet those expectations that we have. This is pulled from one of the other second grade units, and this unit is all about innovation. So it starts by having students look at different innovators. think biographies. But it looks at the characteristics of these innovators. Students have to think about the spark or what motivated that innovator to create what they created, or the need that existed to create that innovation. And then there's always this piece that students connect back to what they're learning. So not just learning about this person that, you know, is abstract in some ways, but being able to say, okay, how do I connect to that person? And then from there, it goes into learning about the Industrial Revolution, and understanding how innovations change society and the impact of so many innovations in such a short time. And then from there, just like all of the different units, it goes into this inquiry where students are creating a product. So this inquiry challenge statement model, this is like the generic one that they use. It's not specific to this. It's just to show the things that it really tries to get students to do, which is create this inquiry product, thinking about their target group or audience, and then what their goal is. And the thing I really appreciate about this is how it provides access points for students. This is especially helpful when, you know, I'm teaching 2 grade levels, and so providing access points for my first graders, even though we're using a 2nd grade curriculum, because it's relevant to them and it provides them a lot of different opportunities to engage. And then they go about actually through the design process and creating their inquiry product, where they have to create a prototype and improve it and share feedback about it, and then reflect on their process, and they get to feel like they actually contributed in this way. So this curriculum has high expectations for kids, but we know that when we have high expectations, that we can get our kids to reach them.
And then the last sort of pillar is actively engaging the students. Oftentimes when we think of curriculum being hands-on, we think of kids physically doing activities, but this kind of goes a little bit further than them actually manipulating something and extending that to their minds, having their minds on as well as their hands and their bodies doing something. So the quote that you see on the screen, self-respect and respect for others should be a hallmark of every social studies classroom, comes directly from the article, or A Vision of Powerful Teaching and Learning in Social Studies. That was something that really stood out to me in my classroom personally with my 4th graders. We've done a lot of work this year with respecting others, thinking critically about what someone is saying, and there's a way that you can respectfully have discourse back with them. And in the short time that we had with my students, a lot of the discussion protocols, the engaging with the text, engaging with perspectives that are differing than my own students' perspectives, that has now bled into things outside of social studies time in the day, which if you think of social studies, it goes far beyond more than just civics, economics, geography, and history, but it also goes into thinking critically, being a listener, empathy, and being that global citizen. And so taking that into my classroom, the students are now respectfully having discourse in math and in reading and engaging with each other's different perspectives from where they come on, just after, 15 days? 15 days of using the curriculum. It's really in the curriculum, the students, yes, they're hands-on, they're playing games, they're reading things. It literally is integrated to every part of the day with them. They're discussing, they're reading, they're doing role-playing, they're doing research for their inquiry product themselves, which then leads them to do some writing. For 4th graders, our inquiry project was them making a board game for economic choices. So thinking about how do you save money for what you need? Is there something that you can make in the board game? The kids could kind of go with it how they want to. But having that discourse back and forth with their partners and in their groups was really vital and important, because what one person might feel is important might not be the same level of importance to their partner. And so having that respectful discourse back and forth was imperative, and was engaging to their minds, because they're then pulling in everything that they know, pulling in the perspectives of their peers, and implementing that in their product as well.
So thank you very much. I appreciate what you shared. It makes me want to be in your classrooms learning social studies from you. So as we move into ensuring equitable perspectives in our social studies curriculum, we want to ensure that as we're moving toward implementation, that we are really thinking about the curriculum being able to incorporate supplemental materials of interest, and being an online educational resource, we're able to pull in additional resources to help scaffold and support student learning, and that we were really recentering our work on deepening expertise within the social skills and social studies standards so that our students the curriculum is a tool. What we're hoping to select today is a tool that will help teachers teach standards to students. And so we also know that through social studies and our experience with our board meeting tonight, that the skills and strategies that we teach starting in kindergarten will lead our students into being civically minded within our local and greater communities. So as we move into our work around the design of mutually supportive content integration, I want to share with you this cross-content integration, which you've heard me speak to before. And we just want to highlight a couple of things here that if you look at this chart, you'll see in science, social studies, and math, it's asking questions or making a statement and planning for inquiry, and it bridges across all three content areas. So, and also with engaging in argument from evidence, civil discourse, critique. So these aren't these isolated standards that live in, I'm teaching science, I'm teaching social studies, I'm teaching math, I'm teaching reading, I'm teaching writing, but it's how do these things come together for a cohesive learning experience for our students. So as we think about if the materials are approved, we are going to work with the committee to develop an implementation timeline, thinking through what professional learning is necessary by staff and with staff, and then really leaning into those connections around digital citizenship, English language arts, social emotional learning, and equity. We know that as we've adopted other curricular resources, that's really important, and you'll start to see a theme about how things connect and that they aren't siloed activities. So our goal is, as we roll out social studies, is to help streamline some of the work with reading and writing as it relates to writing about what you're learning in social studies and understanding how to comprehend text that you are learning about in social studies. So I'd like to just say a big thank you, heartfelt thank you from us to the rest of the committee. They worked extensively for 2 years and are looking forward to helping. Some staff members will be supporting principals around some social studies learning and some of the shifts we're seeing on Wednesday in our schools. So they're looking forward to that. Yay. And then really the pilot teachers who use the resources with their students, and then the community and the students and the staff that provided their feedback on their experiences and thoughts around the curricular resources. So thanks for your time today and your consideration of Inquiry Journeys for the selection process.
Thank you so much. Are there any questions or comments from the board? Director Stewart.
In addition to adding digital citizenship, I'm so glad that we're also making sure that we keep that base of citizenship and democracy at the core. I appreciate that. Can you give me, and I was trying to visualize this, and could you give me an example of how perhaps a lesson either on the Industrial Revolution or the 60s in the Civil Rights Movement, how that lesson would change from where it was before to what would become with this curriculum? Just so I could have for instance.
Sure. So, and you can jump in here if you have things to add. But if we think about a lot of social studies learning historically has been with students reading about a text and taking notes and learning some information and not necessarily making that application to who they are as citizens. And so this curriculum leads with a question that students themselves are reflective upon, and then think about how does that bridge to themselves, the members in their classroom, and the greater community. So really, anything you would like to add, Dylan? Good.
I'm thinking specifically to the economic unit that my fourth graders did. There's a lot that goes into economics, supply and demand, all of that. And my students engaged with that process themselves, which obviously is reflective of the times. As we see now, there's a lot of inflation going on. My students brought up the term inflation before I even mentioned what inflation was. But that shows that, they're hearing things and they're able to access the content in that curriculum themselves. And we talked about, first, just sort of the supply chain. You have a supplier and a buyer, and how money goes from one person to another to the next to the next. Then we talked about what makes price increase or decrease, the supply, the demand, and then talking about competitiveness in terms of if two people are making the same product, how does that determine pricing and all of that. So that is very reflective of the current times themselves. And you can kind of put that in a historical context for the students if they ask about it. You could extend it to, what could happen for if kids are able to think a little bit further. Yeah.
Anything you'd like to add? You're free to, but don't feel pressured to.
The only thing I would add as like a difference is something we really cared about as a committee is looking at like whose story is being told. And so that's just something that we saw a lot more often is we have more voices being told with this curriculum. And we're trying to center voices that are more reflective of our entire community, which is different from curriculums in the past.
Okay. Thank you. Again, given the interesting times we're living in, I think this curriculum is paramount to our kids. Thank you.
Director Yoakum.
Thank you very much for being here, and thank you for presenting, and thank you to the entire committee. I know it's a very long process, so I appreciate it. I also just want to comment, and then 2 quick questions. I really like the comment from the student that said, I like discussing hard topics. That really made me think about that joy of learning that was displayed in the possible student profile and how you asked us to maybe reflect on how we can connect that to our study session previous. So thank you. Were all strands of social studies piloted across all grade levels?
So in a 15-day pilot, we chose specific units.
Yeah.
And the curriculum does do a nice job of being inclusive of all the, each unit has components of all portions of social studies content. And there are some units that hit like civics more in depth than others, but kids would see experiences with each of the content areas.
Was economics sort of the focus
that
point
was
for
the
most?
Focus of this it wasn't just this particular unit that we had them work on. Yeah.
Got it. May I ask one more question, please? Okay, thank you. I like how you said go slow to go fast and that we don't want to overwhelm teachers. And so this curriculum sounds very adaptive, that, as you said, it's rooted in their experiences for the students. So how was the planning and the prep for these 15 days compared to maybe other district curriculum that you work with? Not necessarily current social studies curriculum, but any other curriculum that you work with, kind of that experience on the teacher end.
It was lovely. Yeah, it was lovely. That's all. No, I'm just kidding. No, it was, you could tell that they created it with students in mind. And in doing that, they consider teachers, because when our lives are easier, we can be better for our kids. And so there was so much that was ready to go, and then we could adapt it for the individual needs of our students, but we weren't needing to, like a lot of curriculum, you need to spend so much time just preparing for every single lesson, as you know. But this one, there was a lot that was ready to go, but it was ready to be adaptable for our kids. So it wasn't, scripted in that way that everyone's doing the same because our kids aren't the same, but it didn't require an extensive amount of prep on us. So lovely.
And also, it fit really well into a lot of the technology that we already use in our classrooms. I know for 4th grade, we had one of the people on our committee with us who took the slides that Inquire Ed gave us, or we had access to, and put them into Lumio. So our students were able to then have access to the slides, even though they saw it on the screen, but also in front of them on their computers, able to interact with it that way. And then I had another, the curriculum itself, sorry, I get really nervous in front of the school board. Students, or we had committee members who, when they realized maybe we needed another text that's from a different perspective, or this video doesn't that we're supposed to show to our students may not be the best for our students or is missing something that we were looking for. When we reached out to Inquire Ed themselves, they were very receptive and quickly turned around. It was in like a matter of days or less than a day, or it was a quick turnaround enough for us to be like, oh, that's impressive that they're able to say, okay, let's take that down from the website, let's put up this new document that we found or that we have access to us, or change and adapt whatever we have for the teachers and their needs.
Director Guthrie.
You touched on this a little bit in your presentation. Sorry, first of all, yes, thank you for all the work. This makes my heart happy as the daughter of a U.S. history teacher to see the richness of these resources and what our kids are going to be able to experience. You touched a little bit on you didn't use the word, but differentiation for different ability levels, different knowledge that kids are bringing in. I'm impressed that they know about inflation. Can you expand a little bit more on that? The board, we just heard, I think at our last study session, about the highly capable, the thought that's going in around our highly capable programs and thinking about this curriculum in front of our highly capable learners, for example, or assistive technology resources that are available.
Do you want to talk to speak to that?
So I had a story that I was going to say earlier, but escaped my mind. In my classroom, I have a student who is part of the inclusion program. They are very nonverbal, and they use a switchboard, and right now their switchboard is simply yes, no. And throughout the 15 days with the curriculum and with some strategic partnering with some of my students that work well with my student in particular, that student was able to respond to yes, no questions, but my students were also able to change the questions themselves. Instead of asking broad, open-ended questions, they were able to rephrase them in a way where my student could answer with a yes or no. And then thinking on the opposite end, I do have 2 students who are in Pull-Out Quest, amongst some other students who receive K-5 highly capable services in our building themselves. And the good thing, or what's good about Inquiry, is that the students can really get out of it what they want to put into it, which those students who are highly capable or receive those services are able to then push themselves, because they can then expand further as they dive deeper into the Inquiry question themselves through some guidance with the teacher and other staff members as well, but they're able to then reach that limit that they can push themselves to, and not just feel like they're doing something that, I'm checking a box and getting it done, but they're able to then extend their learning for what works with them.
Any other questions? I had a really quick question for Kelly, probably. You said there's an initial implementation timeline for 2024, and I'm guessing it's a percentage of our elementary schools, and then full implementation, I think you said the next year. I was just kind of curious, what percentage are we looking at for
So
2024?
some of our initial thinking is since we have requirements around the Since Time Immemorial curriculum resource that we're implementing across all of our schools. So it's taking maybe one Inquiry Ed unit this year and really learning about the technical aspects of the tool and how to plan and collaborate to make that, to bring it to fruition for our students. And then, but it would happen across all schools, and we're thinking STI, Since Time Immemorial, as well as one particular unit, which the committee will help provide some guidance on. Mm-hmm. And then the following year, really hearing back in our end-of-year survey that we send out to staff, hearing back how did that first year of implementation go, what could we learn from that, and how do we use that data to ensure we adjust, adapt, and continue doing what worked well.
Thank you.
Sure.
Dr. Holman.
First, I want to thank our 2 teachers for coming tonight. I can tell you, you sharing your stories about your experience helps paint a picture for what this looks like with kids. And anytime our teachers come and tell these stories, I'm always like, I'd love to go try that curriculum. So anyways, I may show up in your classroom. But no, truly, thanks for being here tonight. It's your advocacy for this content is remarkable. And to hear you tell your stories was pretty cool. And then Kelly, would you send me the article, A Vision of Powerful Teaching and Learning in Social Studies, because it was referenced a few times. It sounds applicable, and I'm sure our board would like to get a copy as well, so I'll share it with them.
I'll get that in your hands first thing tomorrow morning.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I will now entertain a motion to approve the recommendation from the Social Studies Curriculum Selection Committee to adopt the materials that have been approved by the Instructional Materials Committee.
So moved.
Inquiry Journeys from Inquire Ed.
God.
Someone's very excited.
I love this area.
Do I have a second?
Second.
It has been moved by Director Stewart and seconded by Director Yoakum that the board approve the recommendation from the Social Studies Curriculum Selection Committee. Is there any discussion? Okay. Hearing no further discussion, we will proceed to vote on the motion. All those in favor, please signify by voting aye.
Aye. Aye.
All those opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. Thank you so much for all of the work. The next item that we have on our agenda this evening is a first reading for the proposed sustainability policy for the school district. Dr. Holman, will you and your staff provide a presentation and information for the board's first reading of this policy?
Yeah, absolutely. And so, as the board knows, it's been quite a journey, like it was with OE 14, similar to this policy as well. And so, Deputy Superintendent Gillingham is here to share a first reading with the board. I know some board members had some comments, and so I would invite those comments to be provided here tonight so that if there's any modifications or changes between first reading and the board action at the May 20th meeting, that those can be incorporated as well. And so with that, I'll hand it off to Matt.
All right, thank you, Dr. Holman and the board. So tonight we're presenting for the board's first reading of its sustainability operational expectation. And just want to talk a little bit about the process for policy development before we get into the policy itself. So the board developed a sustainability policy committee. That committee met starting last August and has met 5 times to begin drafting and revising a policy. The board has engaged in linkages along with the members of the committee. 3 different sessions with students, a session with staff, and a session with the PTSA Sustainability Committee. The board initially was set to bring the policy for consideration on March 25th meeting, and then at that time directed to go back to the policy committee for some revisions, most notably to essentially align the policy with the coherent governance model. And so the committee did that work, and we're bringing forth the first read. Part of that work, typically the board adopts policy, and then following that adoption, the superintendent develops an interpretation, and staff, we support the superintendent in identifying potential indicators. And so tonight, what you're also seeing is the superintendent's interpretation of the policy that is yet to be adopted, and the indicators being brought forth to monitor this policy. So kind of an all-in-one package, and instead of having that kind of play out in sequence of bringing it together. And I think that in part that was trying to capture the feedback that the board had received and that the superintendent had received from various stakeholder groups, and trying to kind of capture some of the ideas that were present in initial drafts, but doing so in a way that's consistent with the governance structure for the school district. As the board has been doing as we've been going and revising or updating policies, the policy has a preamble. So I'm just going to read that preamble. The board takes responsibility for the impact the district has on the environment and believes it is their ethical and moral responsibility to ensure sustainable practices are implemented across all aspects of the district. The board is committed to reducing the environmental impacts of district operations by ensuring operations, programs, and practices lead to increased sustainability, resource conservation, and carbon reduction. Additionally, the board anticipates that changes in the climate may have the potential to disrupt or adversely impact the ability of the district to operate. As such, it commits to identifying operational threats, opportunities, and making those investments deemed prudent to ensure the long-term health and viability of the district to operate. Finally, the board is committed to preparing and educating the students of the district to understand the connection between a sustainable environment and the actions and behaviors humans take that align with a more sustainable and hopeful future. Following the preamble, the policy provides 4 directives to the superintendent. And so I'll read those as well. Recognizing the urgency of the current state of climate change, the superintendent shall establish and maintain practices that 1, reduce and or mitigate the environmental impact of district operations. 2, enhance the resiliency of the district towards future environmental impacts. 3, prepare students to graduate ready for a future where they are equipped to understand and address the complex and challenging interrelationships between humans and the environment. And 4, equip staff to appropriately support district efforts related to this policy. So that would be the policy that the board would be adopting. And then along with that, the superintendent is presenting interpretation and indicators related to each 4 of those directives. And I will just summarize these instead of read them all to the board. What the board should expect as far as really looking at the indicators is that this would be where a lot of the articulating the details around the implementation would show up in the ways in which we'd monitor. So thinking about that, the school district superintendent would bring forth to the board a written plan that articulates the goals and strategies related to this particular policy component. So as the board goes to monitor these things, the substantive pieces of how the district is actually achieving these aims would be brought forth. So you'll have those indicators for 15.1 as well for 15.2. I'll leave that there for a moment for the board to be able to review. Similarly, 15.3. And then finally, 15.4. So should the board adopt this policy at a future meeting, which is currently scheduled for the May 20th meeting to be brought forth for second read and adoption, I want to talk a little bit about, well, then what's next? So we would take steps to figure out how we're going to operationalize these things, which would include identifying expertise to support the development of those plans, specifically the ones that were addressed in 15.1. We would need to identify staffing to support the implementation of the operational changes. We would need to identify kind of what are those specific and tangible actions across the districts that we would focus on for the 24-25 school year. Most likely that would be focusing on what are things that we're currently doing or have committed to, and perhaps that we can do, make sure we're doing better or doing more consistently. And then developing a communication plan. And that's we think we have a high level of community interest in this. We certainly heard from our students. That was one of the things that was written into, I believe, 15.3, was that students want to know what's going on and to be connected to that work. So those would be some of the initial steps to operationalize it. And then when we think about the governance structure and the way that this policy works, the accountability really is that it's a living policy. So this would be scheduled to be monitored as part of the board's work plan for the 24-25 school year, recognizing that some of the initial data may be, will be baseline data, could be some incomplete data, as we've experienced with, similar to implementing OE14 or where we've had major overhauls of policy in the past. The board would expect continued engagement through public comment, possibly could consider linkages as it looks at its schedule for next year, which may lead to some refinements of policy over time, and that's been kind of the practice with the board, as you make some initial determinations around policy, and then as we go to implement or we get kind of continued eyes on it, then finding out there's refinements that can be made. So that this would be very much probably living work for the board over time, over the coming years.
Thank you so much, Matt, for walking us through that. I will open it up for any questions or discussion or comments from the board. Yes, Director Stewart.
Matt, could you give us, going back to 15.1, thank you. There we go. I'm wondering if you could give us, in particular, maybe for the folks at home too, some examples of what you might see as something tangible that you would be instituting to accomplish some of these indicators. I'm trying to get it at my arms around, and I think the other folks too, of what this would mean as far as building impact, as far as curriculum impact. You see where I'm going? Or am I being too vague?
Yeah, I think, well, curriculum impact, right, we would focus that would be 15.3.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah. Okay. So we'll just take that first indicator there, right? Resource conservation management. So, we have the district's engaged with a variety of different ways that this looks like right now. So we heard from students earlier around the green team, right? And so we think about kind of our waste, recycling, composting. I don't know why that just blanked on that term for that, in terms of what does that look like in our current program? That would be an example of that. I think, so thinking about kind of the materials that we're using, what are different ways in which that we could reduce the resources that we're using. Energy, would be part of that. So the board we did a study session, I can't remember, I think that was last January 2023, I think there was a study session where we had McKinstry come in and we went through all of the different ways in which we're currently thinking about that, but to actually develop a plan that says, here's what, not only what we're currently doing, but here's kind of what steps we think we can take in the future. And that would be a deliverable that the board would hold the superintendent accountable for coming and having that prepared.
Well, just one little follow-up. I think it's been very helpful as I've talked to members of the community to point to our new middle school, Timberline, and the various aspects of the building of it and the energy efficiencies and so forth, even down to the ground glass or something they put on the certain parts of the roofs to reflect the energy out. As we look at examples from there, but also then for specs for future buildings, I think it behooves us to really point out to the community how we're doing this in more tangible things, because people can visualize it, they can get their arms around it, because the rest of it, it's so difficult for the people not directly involved in the issue to really visualize it.
Yeah. I would also say I think the feedback that we heard from when the board engaged in those linkages was, and perhaps one of the challenges in engaging in the governance process that the board has right now is there's lots of conversation around the implementation. What does this actually look like, kind of in that tangible, what does this look like when in terms of we're building schools? What does this look like here? And kind of given the structure that we have, the board's policy kind of operates at that kind of values directive level, and so the plans would surface kind of some of those more concrete elements that we got a lot of feedback on.
I think
So, sorry.
15.2, maybe I'm getting my numbers wrong, but the indigenous plants, so forth. One of the problems we've had with some of the fields, such as over at Dickinson and Evergreen, with inability to keep them sufficiently watered to really keep them to grow. Is there a way for us to be able to work with some of the agricultural schools in the state to find grasses that would actually grow in this area and we could use for better fields?
If it's okay, I'm going to table that question because that's really more along the lines of implementation, not necessarily the policy or the indicators or the interpretations. It sounds like Eric has some expertise in it. Director LaLiberty, did you have something you wanted to add?
Yes, two things, and I'll try to be brief. First, I hope we did this in the last time that we discussed this, but if not, I want to do it now. I want to thank everyone who served on the committee. Nirali and Jamie, two of our community volunteers. Why am I blanking their last names? I'm getting there. Those might be
Shaw and Jones.
Nirali Shah and Jamie Jonas. And also Shivani for serving on the committee. And I think that everyone on the committee learned a lot, not just about the work of the sustainability policy, but also on how we can engage. I think there were some learnings on how we can engage in our policy work going forward. And if I could highlight, one of the things I learned was actually from what Shivani and Taryn did with the linkages with the student groups and having multiple opportunities through different modalities to provide comment and really proactively reaching out to students. So it was really wonderful, and I thank you both for your involvement and your leadership on that. On the policy itself, I want to highlight. I'll do three things that I think are noteworthy and will be helpful, and it's on the indicators. In 15.1, I really do appreciate the inclusion of the indicator that the district will coordinate district goals and plans with local entities. We know that solving any of these challenges is not something we can, certainly not something we can do alone, and it does require a coordinated effort with all the other different governing bodies and nonprofits that are doing work in this area. And so thank you, Dr. Holman, for including that as an indicator. I think it's going to be really helpful. And then in 15.3, I wanted to highlight this again with reference to Shivani and Taryn and our students from the Green Team who came today, and that I think it is, we know that we've heard so much from our students about wanting to have an opportunity to provide leadership and involvement in the implementation of this. So I think it's really important to have, as an indicator, that we are directing the system to ensure that there are those opportunities for continued leadership within this space, because there's a lot of interest, there's a lot of expertise. Our students are further ahead than I am on this by leaps and bounds, and so I think it's a really neat opportunity for our students to learn and also to provide the leadership for our district going forward. So, thank you.
Shivani.
Yeah, on that note, I'd like to say thank you so much to the board for actually being willing to kind of go through this policy, especially because sustainability is such an important value to me and countless other students in the district. And so I wanted to say thank you so much. I'm so incredibly grateful, and I'm really excited about 5.3. I think it's really incredibly important to keep students engaged and updated on the implications of this policy, because this does affect them and their futures. And again, I'm thankful to the commitment from the board on this.
Thank you. Any other? Director Guthrie.
Okay, so on, well, we've got 15.3 up here. One of the things that I'd like to, or maybe this is just sort of a clarification or putting a finer point on it, but the second indicator around career options related to environmental sustainability, also thinking about sort of expansion of existing opportunities to take into account sustainability or a greener future. So I'm thinking of like the automotive tech program in Wanik, making sure that we're training students to be able to work on vehicles that are using alternative forms of energy. I think I heard a story that there's like one person in the whole state who is able to work on electric school buses. So every district in the state is basically has this very small pool of people that they can rely on. So thinking about, you know, what is our responsibility in expanding that pool as we hopefully see many more districts, not just like Washington, moving towards electric school buses as an example. And also, can you go back to 15.2? I was curious about why episodic events is in quotation marks. It seems like they're just events. I didn't know if that was, it could be read as implying that they're not real, and we know that they are.
I don't believe it was the intent to imply that they weren't real, rather to call out the episodic events. Like one of the things that that's like come to mind is wildfires, right? I mean, which have actually occurred in our district and have threatened our operations and potentially have could threaten students and families within our areas. And so kind of using events to distinguish kind of an acute incident versus kind of the some of the chronic kind of challenges that we all face as a result of climate change. So it wasn't the intent certainly wasn't to minimize or to call it into question, but rather to highlight that those that would be something that where we as a district would have a responsibility to play a role.
Yes, absolutely agree that we have the responsibility, and just making sure that that's clear in the language or that there's no confusion about that.
Director Yoakum.
I have a lot, but I'll start with two. So specifically to the policy, since we have 15.2 up here, a really quick question, is it going to be 9 or are we still, okay. I realized that as I was saying 15 a lot, so.
Sorry, should be XX.2.
Oh, XX, okay, we don't know yet. Okay, thank you, sorry. Oh, okay.
I mean, on that point, the board has already taken action to sunset the former OE9 policy. And so what we will do is, should the board adopt a sustainability policy, it will be our new OE9 since you have now just a strike-through version of OE9.
Yeah.
And that's it.
Perfect, thank you. Okay, that wasn't my question, but
No, it was
thank you.
OE15 previously,
It
so
was.
we're still making that transition.
Appreciate that. Okay, so the indicator 1 and 2, earlier drafts had that word prioritize instead of consider. And I'm just wondering if you can speak to the reasoning behind removing prioritize and replacing it with consider.
So I think I'll just speak first, and I don't know if Dr. Holman, you want to jump in on this. One of the challenges, and I believe one of the questions that's come up is that how does this policy relate to other policies that the district has, right? And so thinking about consideration of certain investments related to like the development of construction, right, also has to be balanced with the board's policies around the fiscal responsibility. And so the term prioritize would essentially indicate that would trump other responsibilities, and that may have unintended consequences. And so consideration allows for that to be kind of held and balanced and to make some decisions related to all of the considerations that the board has policies on. Not to diminish it, not to necessarily say that would always kind of supersede it.
Sorry.
So in 15.1, one of the things there is a written plan with a document that addresses the challenges. And I think because we're going to revise and go through this year after year, it would be interesting to have a program of work in addition that also captures what has been done each specific year, and it gets updated with all of the different calendar years as you continue to go through. That way, in 5 years, we can understand what has happened, what challenges have been addressed, and the further needs. So I would just maybe add that as a final indicator there.
Yeah, I think it's an excellent point, and that's one that I think I know for many of us that when we had the report from McKinsey around all the work that was doing, I was like, wow, we are doing some things, and so calling that out and what the foundation that's being built on is important. So thank you for that.
Thank you. Anyone else? Director Stewart.
To address Director Guthrie's concern about episodic downplaying anything, would the word specific be it? Excuse me?
It was the events in quotes.
Well, okay. I thought it was the episodic also, so.
Director LaLiberty.
No, I'm good.
Director Guthrie, did you have one more?
Yes. Building off Director Yoakum's question and the response about sort of balancing the different priorities, one sort of tactical comment, recognizing the public comment earlier about looking for grants or exploring all the opportunities to reduce potentially reduce that budget impact might be an interesting thing to think about as an indicator. I don't know if it would go in this policy or if it might end up in one of our financial policies. I sort of touched on this a little bit at the study session earlier. Of there's some cross-cutting things here, and things might land in different places. I'm also curious whether what the process would look like to wrestle with that prioritization, or how do we see that playing out in the future, if this policy is in place, and then we're looking at doing buildings, for example, how will the board participate? What are the expectations on us? What are the expectations on the district? Do you have any thoughts about what that might look like?
So at the May 20th meeting, the board will receive a first reading of a recommendation for a construction levy. And one of the things that our construction team has added to their evaluation is sustainable design. And so you will hear from Associate Superintendent Posthumus around the various aspects that are being considered related to sustainable design. And as we go through that process, there may be times where there's a distinct choice that needs to be made around cost. Because there's times where sustainable design, the upfront cost is greater than, I'll just say, a standard build out of a school. And so when we think about that prioritization, that will come at the staff level, but that will also come at the board level as you're considering well, in this instance, it's kind of the holistic nature of an overall, dollar amount of a levy to rebuild aging facilities. And so those are distinct choices that we'll need to make, but it has to be, based in something. And so it's always that balance of, the full policy set, as Deputy Superintendent Gillingham mentioned, but it's also making sure that we're actually elevating those conversations and having those. And so that's part of their planning process that they're actually calling out in their documentation now. And so, I appreciate that. And my guess is this will be similar to, as the board adopted OE14, there were questions around, well, when will we do OE14 as a district? And it's really about how does this start to infuse in everything we do and become a way of being, as opposed to, check the box, make sure we're thinking about sustainability, but sustainability becomes the way that we're operating as opposed to something we have to remind ourselves to think about. So that's, as I see this policy being implemented, it's really about how does this become an organizational value that is just how we do our work, as opposed to something that we're reminding ourselves to add on. So that's, as I think about it, that's a very tangible example of something you'll see, work that's been done from a department that has high impact and something that they're measuring. We also have standards around design and implementation that the state continues to pass, legislation that we're accountable for, and so it's understanding how are we measuring and meeting those expectations, and at times that will come with that balance again. Here's the requirement that we need to fulfill. By fulfilling this is something we had to do. Increase price, not do something, whatever that is. And so that's another aspect of it, is making sure that we're cued into legislation and those changes as well that impact our work.
Yes, Tarn.
Okay, I don't want to spend too much time on this, but it goes back to the episodic events thing specifically. So I think the events in quotations is a little bit general. So I was just saying, I think if you just read that sentence, I think you can end it at climate change itself and remove episodic events in whole. But if you want to clarify that piece, I would use impacted by adverse climate change circumstances, events, and experiences, since that captures like what someone goes through, the actual thing that might happen, and then also like the perspectives that are considered in it with the experiences.
Thank you. And final comment, Director Yoakum.
Is it final?
I'll do a final comment, so
Well,
second to last.
Well, so can my final comment be 4 parts? I mean, is this our only time to talk about this? Is that correct? No, you haven't told me yet. To talk about it? So maybe. So these were questions I emailed that I was just told I'm okay to ask tonight. Is that okay if I go through all of them? Okay, perfect, thanks. So there's a lot of passion in this community around sustainability, and I appreciate you speaking to the larger embedding of this into all of the work. This might be more of an engagement question, but kind of along the lines of how can we incorporate this passion as we move forward, and thoughts regarding a potential advisory committee or advisory group or a committee similar to those implemented this year around this policy.
So as we think about, Matt, would you go to slide 9? Yes, it is. As we think about identifying expertise, part of that is expertise, like individuals that have done this before, that have done this work to put a plan together. Regionally, we have a lot of good examples. But it's also identifying the internal expertise. One of the things, I think I've mentioned this to the board, I had intended to have a superintendent student advisory this year. And as we think about next year, I have that same intention. And as I think about what would be a great topic to really highlight throughout the year and engage with our students, for me, it's around sustainability. So that's one aspect. I just asked my team to set time aside on our master planning for next year for a sustainability work group, similar to how we adopted an inclusion work group and things like that. So we know we have a community that, in terms of their content knowledge around this, super high. Yes, their passion as well and all of that, but to be able to bring our community together around an area that there's broad support to do this work well. I think we're kind of excited about taking that step. Also, for me, as I think about implementation of this policy, you can see the second bullet there identifies staffing to support. So I've asked my team to pull together job descriptions because for me, as I think about how do I want to lead this work, I want the hallmark of my leadership to be practice that is implemented deeply across our schools, that it's an implementation that, you know, doesn't require just that constant grind, but that it actually becomes part of the practices of our schools. And so as I think about, you know, any of the various components that a few of our schools are doing well, well, if we want to do that well across all of our schools, that actually requires time, attention, and skill. Skill to be able to implement at scale, because implementing something at 56 schools is not a small task. But having the time, the passion, the background to be able to lead that work is really important as well. So I've asked my team to pull job descriptions. I've asked Barbara to look at, you know, different funding models for that. And because we're in an interesting budget time, but as we think about this work, resourcing it, investing up front is also part of this work as well. So those are a few things that that we're currently working on. So, yep.
Okay, one more and then a comment. I'll just do one more. And this goes back to the preamble and kind of relating it to indicator, the second indicator in 15.1 where we talk about greenhouse gas reduction. Can we use the term greenhouse gas reduction or heat trapping, pollution reduction instead of carbon reduction in there? Because it relates directly right back to that 15.1 indicator as an edit. That would be my suggestion. And I have a comment. Is that okay? Okay, I wasn't getting any acknowledgement or anyone want to discuss that? Okay, here we go. So I did just write a thank you because I know that there was a lot of time and effort put into this, and I really want to acknowledge that. From the students to staffs, families, communities who met or emailed the board and the district staff regarding the sustainability policy, thank you. The level of your knowledge and passion that I've witnessed during these interactions really inspires me and gives me a lot of hope. I feel so fortunate to be able to learn from all of you. You may not see your feedback displayed in the board policy presented this evening, but know that your ideas and suggestions will be included in conversations moving forward, as I'm sure the district is going to be looking at those as they operationalize these high-level board values and expectations presented this evening. So as the board continues to engage more with our community, I hope we as a board can help our community develop a better understanding of the differences between board and district work. And again, to those who have engaged in this process, thank you. Please keep advocating and educating. Yes, I am looking at the two of you here. So thank you. I wanted to end with that, a big thank you.
Okay. So I'm going to wrap up this discussion. I would also like to say thank you. I actually ran on this when I ran for election to the school board. Sustainability curriculum, a focus on sustainability for our school district. And after 2.5 years, it's coming forward and it's really exciting to see. I do want to say we approach this in maybe a different way than other policies have been written. And I think that there's been learnings and takeaways, just like with anything else we do, right? Sometimes you do a great job, sometimes there's room for improvement, and I think it's a combination. But either way, I'm very excited for what we've landed on and for moving forward and seeing what works and what doesn't work, because I am under no illusion that this is perfect right now. I do think that a lot of our community is very much interested in the implementation and how these are going to pan out. And I will just say we are listening, and at the same time, it takes a minute, and please be patient with us and just keep talking to us and keep working with us. I'm staring at these two because they're one of the first meetings I had when I became a school board member. And thank you again to our students and for all the work that they've done as well. So the board of directors will take a formal action at our next board meeting on May 20th to adopt the attached policy. It will be OE9, I believe, sustainability. And if there are any other edits or concerns or questions or comments, please send them along to Dr. Holman and his team before the next meeting. Thank you so much. We will go ahead and call a 10-minute recess before we continue with our meeting. Ready to resume.
Okay.
Thank you. We're ready to resume our meeting. I believe that there is a motion that somebody wanted to propose.
I move that we table the next agenda item, inclusionary practices program update, for the next business meeting of the board.
Is there a second?
It's out here hanging.
It has been moved by Director Liberty and seconded by Director Guthrie that the board tables the next item on our agenda, inclusionary practices program update, until our May 20th, 2024 board meeting. All those in favor, please signify by voting aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, hearing none, motion carries. The final item on our agenda this evening is the adoption of Administrative Policy 2415. Dr. Holman.
Yes, and so as the board heard at a previous study session around graduation pathways, the opportunity to implement the performance-based pathway was presented to us, and so the board did revise the graduation policy to include the performance-based pathway in our graduation policy. And tonight, Dr. Rose is here to ask the board to take action tonight on the graduation pathway specific policy, which the board is required to adopt. And so with that, I know Jen has a few slides to just provide context for why we're asking for a single reading to adopt the policy tonight.
Thank you. Just as a reminder, the previous graduation pathways was this list, and it was generated some years ago, and the last summer, and then in 2023, the State Board of Education added in the new performance-based pathway. And the work that the State Board has done since then has been, it's brand new work, and so it's been really interesting to watch unfold, and we as a district have tried to stay up with the work, really meeting by meeting that the State Board has. The purpose of the performance-based pathways, as we've covered, is to really recognize student learning or give students an option to demonstrate their learning other than these traditional pathways. But just as a reminder, most students are still going to meet their graduation pathway through something other than the performance-based pathway. But the performance-based pathway has this really wonderful part to it of recognizing students for the learning that they do in things other than the more traditional pathways. So the board itself has provided, every time they provide guidance, it's fairly extensive and builds on, I'm trying to say, they didn't have any policy before this. There wasn't something that guided them before it, so every time they've released some guidance, it's been something that's been significant. So the rulemaking and public comment really went up through January. They had a work group to give input into answering questions that districts had, which really were, what is this supposed to look like? Like, what are the requirements for this? And so in March, the very end of March, there was a revision to our graduation at the policy at the March 25th meeting. I think it was that same week that the State Board of Education released like a 40-plus page guidance to what the graduation pathways would look like, which was great because it really allows us to plan more specifically. So it actually has in that link, which I believe we've sent in a board brief, but I can absolutely send again and attach to this. It lists out the standards that students need to meet in ELA and math. It has rubrics by which we would assess the student graduation pathway to see that they've demonstrated mastery of ELA and or math. So we've started to do some significant work on that. We have enough guidance that we've been able to do some significant work. The key stakeholders that we need to work with include our high school principals. We've met with them. We have a multi-department team right now engaged in planning, and we've developed an ELA option for 23-24 that meets the requirements of State Board of Education. And we have the policy here tonight, which then directs the superintendent to create a procedure by which we can implement this. And as we've gotten into looking at what the graduation pathway, the performance-based graduation pathway requires, it's really clear that we need that additional policy and a clearer procedure. So the policy itself is pretty simple. I'll just give you a moment. It's on the 2 slides there. And it's similar to the change that we made in the graduation policy, but what we did with the graduation policy was add this performance-based pathway as a 9th option for meeting graduation pathways. So this is giving a little bit more description to what that pathway would look like.
And Jen, this is WASDA's model policy language, and so they took the RCW, they layered it into a policy, and so this really is, word for word, I believe.
Except for where it says Lake Washington School District.
Yes. Well, I think they write their model policies for Lake Washington. So.
Can I ask 2 points of clarification?
Absolutely.
So you said that we've established the ELA learning standards for this performance-based graduation pathway, but not the math?
Correct.
Okay. And then I know this isn't our language, but the second bullet, student learning experience. Do you think you could elaborate on what they mean by that?
Yes, this is where the State Board is really trying to allow and recognize students to bring their lived experience to this learning, to have it recognized. So it could be anything like if a student has created an art project where they used math, or they used ratios or something that hits the math standards, to be able to show a student learning experience, to show that they learned. They really wanted to leave the door open to it could be any type of project, which is one of the reasons why we want to develop a clear procedure around this, so that we're able to make sure that we're giving clear guidance to students about the learning that needs to happen, but their experience itself can be pretty wide open. It can be the examples that they have in the 40-plus page booklet are things like they can create a podcast, they can deliver a performance, they can build something, they can engage in a community service project, that they've really opened it wide open so that it just really has to make sure that the student is engaged in learning.
And who does the evaluation of whether or not a project qualifies?
That'll be part of the procedure. And so the procedure calls out that it is several people, it can be up to several people, like a panel of several people. It needs to include a math or an ELA teacher, depending on the graduation pathway that they're going for, and that they use the rubrics that are provided by the State Board of Education.
Quick question. We have several students up in East Lake that currently work on the Semester Independent as their reporters, covering a breadth of topics. Could projects like that be applied as a graduation pathway?
Projects like that, if they intentionally address the math or ELA standards and use the rubric to evaluate, absolutely could.
I'm just thinking of the ELA standards that might address, the English language usage and so forth.
Mm-hmm. They were very specific, so
Okay.
I'll share the link, but they're very specific about the standards that need to be addressed. Yeah. So next steps, again, if policy 2415 is adopted, then that directs the superintendent to develop procedure around the policy. The plan would be for this summer that we would have a work group of building leaders, specialists, teachers, come together to develop school-level procedures and supports, because this is a very individualized plan. This, again, would not be, it's a wonderful option. This is not going to be the graduation pathway option that most of our students choose. And so we need to be very clear about the supports and how it's laid out for our students and for our staff. So that work would happen over the summer. It really does give us a deeper understanding of ways to recognize student learning, and that possibility, that potential for creativity is pretty exciting. And then we'll continue the development of implementation systems. We are out ahead of the curve in doing this work because we're really excited about it. And as you know, the question about student learning experience, that is a wide open door. So as we understand how to implement this in ways that really support student learning, we may come back and say we need to add a little bit more to the policy, or we might need to, we'll continue to develop our procedure. And that is the graduation pathway policy.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Yes, Director Guthrie.
Is this then available for the class of 2024, or would this first be available for the class of 2025?
This would be, we were able to meet the State Board of Education requirements with ELA for the class of 2024. A question I've asked and I don't have a clear answer to yet is how many of our students might be accessing this. And it's a bit of a murky picture because many students that might have accessed this, the State Board of Education provided or extended the COVID waiver for the class of 2024. So we thought it was really important and exciting to have this option available. So we have the guidance and the resources ready for ELA. Math is more complex. It's harder to have something, like it's relatively, I don't know, easy is the wrong word, but it is possible to meet the ELA standards with multiple different things that we already have in the system. Math is going to be take a little bit more thought.
Any other questions? Okay. I will now entertain a motion to approve the adoption of Policy 2415 as presented.
So moved.
Second.
It has been moved by Director Stewart and seconded by Director Guthrie that the board approves the adoption of Policy 2415 as presented. Is there any further discussion? I would just like to say thank you for being so fast and on developing a pathway for ELA for our students so that it could be implemented this year. That's amazing how quick that work was done. Hearing no further discussion, we will proceed to vote on the motion. All those in favor, please signify by voting aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Hearing none, the motion carries. The next item on our agenda this evening is the superintendent's report. Dr. Holman.
So tonight, the board approved 4 new and loose studies as part of your consent agenda. I don't think we've ever spent any time talking about new and loose studies, but we often get asked about them. So anytime we're thinking about an aging school and we talk about replacing that school, we oftentimes get questions about, well, why don't you just renovate it? Why don't you just, kind of do that work? Well, a new and loose study really is the evaluation of that. And so I kind of wanted to walk through what a new and loose study is. It is a crucial part in our construction projects. And one of the reasons it's crucial is it allows us to apply for school construction assistance funding, and so for SCAP. And so without that new and loose study, there is no SCAP dollars that we can apply for. And so what does this study do? It evaluates the overall cost effectiveness and feasibility of renovating the aging building versus constructing a new facility. And so when you think about renovating an entire school, part of that feasibility is, what do you do with the kids? I mean, that truly is part of, and so you will see some kind of percent cost-benefit analysis in the next couple of slides. In that cost, we're also having to take into account the overall cost of housing students in portable land, on campus. Like that's what this process doesn't do is evaluate the impact on students and student learning with that model. And so that's something that also has to be taken into consideration as we're thinking about these numbers that I'll present to you tonight. One of the things that our team also does as they go through the design and pre-design process is, are there opportunities, they're calling them hybrid opportunities, to do both renovation and new. And so in the new and loose studies, you'll see the term modernization. That's a term we used in the 90s for a program which actually was tear down and replace, where they use the term modernization truly for renovation. So those two terms are synonymous. So key components, it's the cost-benefit analysis, evaluation of safety and code compliance, alignment with our ed spec is another key aspect of this, and then overall community impact. And so for our elementary schools, we had previously done the New and Lou study on Alcott Elementary back in 2018, and so BNN Builders updated the New and Lou study for Alcott just this year, and the cost of modernization or renovation is approximately 1% more than replacement. And so you'll see that in the overall study and kind of how they got to that. And so the recommendation is full replacement. Now you might say, well, that's a pretty narrow dollar amount. And you think about the impact of students for 2 years being placed in portables and not having access to a school and things like that, it does become pretty impactful. And so that recommendation you'll see in the New and Lou study is a full replacement. Smith Elementary, Malum Architects completed that. You'll see a similar percent there with about a 2% cost more than replacement, so that full replacement is the recommendation. With our middle schools, a little bit more information here. So Evergreen Middle School, we completed the New and Lou study in 2013 in preparation for a bond measure that didn't pass, which we would have a new Evergreen Middle School at this point had it passed. And so you can see that, I'll start with the recommendation. The recommendation is around a hybrid approach with Evergreen Middle School. It's to continue to use the gymnasium and the athletic spaces of the building. Modernization actually is a better approach in this situation, and it's about replacement for the academic spaces, administration type spaces, and the difference in cost, the overall modernization, is approximately 2%. For Kamiakin Middle School, one of the questions that we asked leading into that was, are we able to maintain the gymnasium facilities at Kamiakin? It's, the community views that as an asset, and so that was one of the things we wanted to make sure we received a response to. You can see similar Kamiakin. This is an updated study because we completed the New and Lou back in 2013. You can see the modernization cost is approximately 14% more than replacement. And in their evaluation of the gymnasium and athletic facilities, just the overall cost was substantially more to upgrade it for code compliance related to seismic upgrades. So that's a quick overview of New and Lou studies, the findings. Detailed reports are in the board's packet tonight, and so if community is ever interested in that information, we can always point them back to the board's packet here, because it truly is a process to evaluate the overall cost so that we're making the correct decision as we move forward. So thought that would be of interest to the board as we move through this next phase of our recommendation related to a construction levy. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Holman. The next item on our agenda this evening is Public and Community Affairs. This portion of the business meeting of the board is an opportunity for any board members to inform and provide updates from organizations or groups they engage with on behalf of LWSD. Are there any updates from the board this evening? Yes, Director Yoakum.
Would this be LWPTSA, or is that a different category? PTSA? Well, is this where I can talk about that really quickly? Okay. Really quickly, I was able to speak at the monthly Lake Washington PTSA virtual meeting, and I just briefly talked about our working on our annual work plan and how OE3 and looking at district engagement and how the board is taking an interest in engagement on the board's end as well. And that was it. Talked about engagement.
Thank you for taking the time to go do that. Director Guthrie, I don't want to put you on the spot, but do you want to speak to the... Did we already talk about this? To the changes to the WASDA positions that we submitted?
Yes, so we, at I think the March 25th board meeting, approved 4 different proposals for WASDA's positions catalog. Two legislative positions that to revise an existing position around facilities and around climate impact mitigation. And a third legislative position that was net new around literacy and supporting literacy. All 3 of those passed the legislative committee as we had previously approved them. We also approved a 4th permanent position, also around literacy. And those are 2 separate committees. So within WASDA, there's a legislative committee that meets and approves legislative positions, and then there's a resolutions committee that approves the permanent positions. So the permanent position got kicked back by the resolutions committee. We had submitted alongside Shoreline, we had submitted a joint submission for a proposal. And then also separately, Peninsula School District had proposed another position around literacy. So there was some feedback from the resolutions committee of this is what we'd like to see. And then also hopefully that they were hoping that we would all work together and propose a single position versus having 2 different dueling permanent positions going in front of WASDA, the full WASDA body, in September. So I met with the directors from Shoreline and Peninsula. We have a single combined position. The board approved that on consent earlier today. The resolutions committee is meeting just for us later this month to take a look at this one position. Fingers crossed that it gets a due pass recommendation. I should have said the legislative positions are not passed. They receive a due pass recommendation. All of WASDA will be voting on all 4 of those positions at General Assembly in September, regardless of whether everything goes, whether or not whether it has a due pass or do not pass recommendation. But obviously, we really prefer due pass because a lot of districts won't look closely at the ones that are do not pass. So thank you to the board for approving the updated permanent position. I will get back to Marissa at WASDA tomorrow and let her know that was done. And Peninsula and Shoreline, I think, are both meeting. Their boards are meeting tomorrow night to hopefully do the same. And then we will cross our fingers for a due pass recommendation.
Thank you so much. The next item on our agenda this evening is school visits. We have 2 school visits scheduled for the month of May, and I believe that they will be the last 2 school visits of the school year. I believe it's the 21st and the 23rd. The first one to Juanita and the second at Sandberg Elementary. Yes.
Can I
Director
say something else
Yocum.
about school visits? Is that
yes.
okay? Because
one second.
Sorry.
If you are interested in attending the school visits, please make sure that you notify Teresa. Yeah, good job. Now, Director Yocum, did you have something else?
I was just so excited. Yes, because when I looked at what is included when we can talk about school visits, we can also talk about attendance at school performances. So I do want to mention that both Director Guthrie and I were able to attend the Renaissance Middle School, their performance of High School Musical, which was absolutely incredible. Congratulations to the students, the staff, and the families. It was a wonderful production, and I felt very exhausted for those teachers after watching it, because I know that's a lot of work.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing. Does anybody else have any school updates? No? Okay. Then the next item will be board member committee updates. Do any board members have updates that they would like to provide? Yes. Director Guthrie.
So on April 18th, Community Connectors met, and it was supposed to be the last meeting of the year, but we keep adding more. So we are, I believe, going to have one more on Teams later this month or maybe sometime in June, but before the end of the year. So at that meeting, we reviewed, there's some preliminary dashboard data that's been put together. Basically, when our community resource officers are at our schools, they need to submit some information about how they're spending their time. So we have been reviewing that at a couple of meetings now and providing feedback on the data that's incorporated there. We also reviewed the language of the Memorandum of Understanding between LWSD and our 3 law enforcement partners, as well as there is a new standard operating procedures manual, I think that's the right term, that is referenced in the MOU, which has more detail on how we expect CROs to engage when they are at our schools. Also talked a little bit about what community connectors will look like in the next school year. A little bit of a different approach where this year it's been one group, and there's been law enforcement representation, there's been community representation, and going forward, separating things out a little bit more. There's a sort of a plan for the meetings coming up this year, and still having that community group, which is really focused on working with the community, placing the district really taking responsibility for interacting with students, or for gathering feedback from students on safety and so on, or what makes them feel safe at school, and then some other opportunities for law enforcement to engage separate from those. So definitely some interesting things to think about, especially as we were talking about OE10 and the work that the board will be doing around that next year, making sure, I'm really encouraged to see that we will have those channels that are already present, because certainly a huge part of the learning environment that we're looking at in OE10 is just basic safety. Do I feel safe at school? What does that mean to me? What is the district doing to create that safe learning environment? Yeah.
Thank you so much. Anyone else? Well, I will just say that we got an update on the strategic planning committee work that has been done this year during our study session, and if anyone is interested, please go and watch. We will be having an update on the high school experience at our next May 20th study session, and so I won't go into a long summary here because we are going to hear it at the next study session, and it is late. So the board plans to meet next on May 20th, study session at 5 p.m. with a board meeting at 7. The board will now meet in executive session for 30 minutes for the purpose to consider the selection of a site or the acquisition of real estate by lease or purchase. Please note, executive sessions are closed to the public. The board will convene in an executive session starting at 10 p.m. At the conclusion of the executive session, the May 6th board meeting will be adjourned at 10:30 p.m. Thank you, everyone.